Hey, it's Liz Kelly. One Shiny podcast will be touring from Friday, November 2nd to Wednesday, November 7th, where Tate, Titus, and nephew Kyle are traveling to Columbus, Ohio, Louisville, Kentucky, Bloomington, Indiana, and Chicago, Illinois to tip off the college basketball season. You can find links to tickets on The Ringer's Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
Welcome to the Ringer NBA show, The Mismatch. I'm Chris Vernon, and joining me as he does every Tuesday from TheRinger.com is Kevin O'Connor, a.k.a. Kevin O'Bomber, a.k.a. Kevin O'Conflict, a.k.a. Kevin O'Concert, O'Climber, O'Candyland. Kevin!
What up, Chris? How you doing this morning?
You had a late night last night.
Oh, yeah.
Because
late night.
You witnessed an overtime thriller for this early season with the San Antonio Spurs beating the Los Angeles Lakers 143-142 to drop the Lakers to 0-3. LeBron missed some free throws down the stretch, and man, oh man, there's only been 2 games there at the Forum for the Lakers so far, but both of them have been wildly entertaining and have had something big come out of it. We knew there was already going to be an immense amount of attention paid to the Lakers, but good grief, man. The first 2 games of the season, one of them has a fight and one of them has LeBron going to the free throw line at the end and then done in by and misses some free throws, and Patty Mills does in the Lakers on their home floor. What was it like?
Well, first of all, the atmosphere was ridiculous. I mean, that was a wild regular season game, especially for October. I don't recall a place being that loud this early in the season. The game itself, I mean, it feels weird to say this in a game where both teams scored over 140, but San Antonio's defense did a really nice job in the first half at containing LeBron James. Dante Cunningham, granted he fouled out eventually, did a nice job containing LeBron. Spurs defense was collapsing into the paint. Like, there were 2, sometimes 3 guys in the paint, which made it hard for LeBron and other Lakers players to attack the rim. Things changed in that second half. But overall, like, I'm still just blown away by the pace and the scoring as a result of this freedom of movement because of the 14-second shot clock, all of these things that are increasing scoring right now.
Everybody's going to talk about the Lakers and what they have to figure out, but I'm interested in your thought on San Antonio, getting to see them in person. What do you think? Because this is a team that obviously is much different than it has been constituted for the last several years, right? The familiar faces are no longer there, even though we did have Aldridge have a monster game and Patty Mills hit the big shot last night. What did you think of this new version of San Antonio?
A couple things. The first one that really comes to mind is DeMar DeRozan, right? I was talking to somebody before the game about how, it's disappointing that we don't get to see DeJounte Murray and Derek White with the opportunity to run point for this team. But that does mean DeMar DeRozan gets more opportunity to be a playmaker. Last year, we saw him make strides passing the ball for the Raptors because of the increased role, the changed offense under Dwayne Casey. And this year with San Antonio, he's been kind of pushed into more of a heavy playmaking role. And last night, he had the 14 assists to only 2 turnovers. Granted, against it was the Lakers' just horrific turnstile defense. I mean, the Lakers defense is really, really bad. It is probably worse than what a lot of people expected it to be. It's still interesting to see DeRozan in that role as a playmaker. And then the other thought is just Bryn Forbes. That guy's got a flamethrower shot. Each season he's gotten better. This is his 3rd year now with the Spurs, but his shot has really developed and shot 39% from 3 last year, shooting nearly 50% so far this year. That guy can hit big-time shots with a hand in his face.
All right, so what do you think the issues are with the Lakers? What does Luke Walton have to figure out?
We touched on this a little bit yesterday. He checked in terms of rotations. I think like Alonzo Ball starting over Rondo. Once Rondo comes back, to me, that's number one. I think Lonzo Ball is just a better fit next to LeBron James, and he's a better defensive player. And then to close last night's game, Luke Walton stuck with Josh Hart over Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who is just Hart is a far better player in virtually every category, I think, and a more consistent player as well. Besides that, Chris, look, I mean, Steve Mikhailuk and Jonathan Williams last night getting an opportunity to play, I think that says a lot about where Walton and the coaching staff is with Michael Beasley and Zubats. Williams was solid last night. He's a good rebounder after 2 years at Missouri, 2 years at Gonzaga. And then Mikhailuk didn't hit a shot last night, but he has a flamethrower from 3. And I'm curious to see if those guys get more minutes moving forward for the Lakers too, especially with Mikhailuk, to increase spacing, but also improve the defense, because JaVale McGee, you look at his numbers last night, 16 points on 13 shots, 8 rebounds, 1 block, and it's like, not bad. But then, you watch games and those 6 fouls, a lot of them are avoidable fouls, and, you see the missed rotations and you see the lack of communication. They need to find a defensive big. McGee can do it for you in 14, 15 minutes per game, but nearly 30 minutes for him is too much. They need to find another big.
Nice little shout out for Jonathan Williams. I actually followed him in high school. He's a Memphis kid. He was one of the few that was a highly recruited kid that left the town and went elsewhere. And obviously then he ended up on that Gonzaga team was outstanding that he was a part of. And I certainly didn't expect him to go into the league and end up getting 14 minutes in a big game, but he did well last night. What do you think about the Kuzma deal? Because he ends up taking 25 shots last night. There's probably not a lot of nights, to be fair. I don't know. Given the pace, maybe you were seeing a lot of guys take a lot more shots than you're used to. But in the absence of Brandon Ingram, you saw the full display of Kuzma. Now, not only did he take 25 shots, he played 45 minutes in the game. Is this one of those we're going to look back and say this is the huge Kuzma night? Or do you think that Kuzma could be primed, especially now playing alongside LeBron James, that they've got to figure out a way to make the most of what Kuzma can bring to the table? And last night, 37 is a big number, Kev.
This is who Kuzma is. Kuzma's the type of guy where those first 2 games, he was 2 for 12 from 3. Last night, he was 4 for 10 from 3. And the shot opens up the game for him, right? Mm-hmm. Kuzma is somebody who his shot developed early last season. It looked like a much improved shot, and I think it is. But he's still a player who's going to be an inconsistent shooter, just like he was in his time at Utah. He was somebody who never found a consistent stroke. And it's better now, like I said, Chris, but I still think those inconsistency issues will be there. It's just, it'll be, instead of him shooting around, what was it in college? I think he shot maybe almost exactly 30% from 3 over his 3 years at Utah. In college, in the NBA, maybe that turns into 35, 36% from 3, where you get some games in high variance where he just knocks down everything, but then games where it's like, this dude can't hit a shot. Kuzma is a spark plug, right? I think a lot of times we think about point guards as spark plugs. They come off the bench, they handle the ball a lot, and they can spark offense for your team. But Kuzma, to me, at the forward spot, can be that guy for the Lakers or whatever team he plays for over the duration of his career, where he'll average, 18, 19 points, but he'll have 30-point games and a lot of 5-point games too.
Do you think the LeBron, Kuzma, Ingram triumvirate is going to fit well together?
Yeah, I do. I think it works.
Okay. All right. It'd be interesting to see if they can all, right? Like that's the goal, is to be able to all be super successful at the same time. And you saw in the absence of Ingram last night, let's be fair. Kuzma probably doesn't get 25 shots if Ingram's in the game, right?
He might. Yeah, he might.
Maybe.
Maybe he did. He had games like this last year.
Well, he also didn't have LeBron James on his team.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, but he also had a lot of games where he shot, 18, 19, or 20 plus times early in the year too. I forget. He had his breakout game early November last season. I forget the team it was against, but dropped 30 for the first time. And, this was following his flashes in summer league, and then an impressive preseason. Then in the early season, he was pretty good. And then he had that big 30-point game that was like, whoa, this guy actually for real.
All right. The microscope is going to be much greater on everything they do. And frankly, they have given people reason to really pay attention. Their first 2 games have just been out of this world. The ones that have taken place in LA so far. Do you look at this and say the 0-3 start is discouraging? Do you look at it and say the 0-3 start is just them figuring out and a function of the suspensions, and LA is going to be every bit as good as you thought they were going to be?
I think for both the Lakers and the Thunder, obviously 0-3 is not ideal because of the way the Western Conference is, because of last season where you can win 46 games and you can miss out on the playoffs. Every single game matters, right? Every game matters, and this could end up being the difference between being the 3 seed or the 8 seed or maybe even missing out in the playoffs. However, for the Lakers and the Thunder for that matter, especially the Lakers because they have LeBron James on their team, it's not worth panicking over. This is a new team. It's a lot of new guys on this team that are developing chemistry together. And I think last night we saw those two sides. We saw that team that's figuring out who they are, that has some personnel issues with shooting and spacing in the first half where they couldn't attack the rim. And then in the second half and in overtime, we saw what this team could look like. They're going to be fine. They're going to become a really, really high-power offense as they develop chemistry over the course of the season and figure out the right combinations of players to put together on the court to maximize their team. It's going to happen over time. It's just a matter of, will it happen soon enough? And I think they'll be fine, though, Chris. I still look at them as a high 40s, maybe 50-win team for sure.
And in fairness, and we'll probably get to see how great they can look when they play. I think it's Phoenix that's up next. In fairness, the way their season started, it's murder, right? I mean, you're playing at Portland. Portland had won 17 home openers in a row. The last team to beat Portland at Portland, the first game of the season, was the Kobe Shaq Lakers. And you had Paul Allen passing away and all the emotion of that going in. So that's not an easy spot, first game of the season. And then they've lost to the Rockets and the Spurs. Right? I mean, so that's why I'm glad you brought up Oklahoma City. They didn't lose to the Rockets and the Spurs. They got their ass kicked by the Kings and Iman Shumpert, of all things. So that one stay. I could not believe it.
All this time, Shumpert just needed to get away from LeBron.
I swear to you, I didn't see that game. And then when I saw the box score, I was like, what the hell? Iman Shumpert? Because that the first game that they played when they put out their starting lineup, right? I think they had played that Pelicans game the Kings had, but what was the first game? Because I had put out their starting lineup. Oh, it was the Jazz. They hosted the Jazz at home, right?
Yep.
And their starting lineup was Bjelica, Cauley Stein, Yogi Ferrell, DeAaron Fox, and Buddy Hield. And like Shumpert was just like one of the other guys coming off the bench, like Josh Jackson or Frankie Mason or any of the others. And then the next thing I know, I was like, wait, hold on now. Iman Shumpert is dropping almost 30 points against this team. And so that one got a lot of attention because it was going to be Westbrook's first game back, right? That's what makes it a little different. It's not Houston. It's not the Spurs. That's at home in Westbrook's return, getting run out by the Sacramento Kings. Do you think it's too early to worry about what they've got going on in Oklahoma City? They do seem to have a lack of shooters.
I think for OKC, their roster is problematic because they don't have a lot of shooters on that team. And, you could say the same thing about the Lakers, but I think overall the Lakers team, I think, has better shooting. This Oklahoma City roster does not. There's really not a lot of good shooters on this team up and down the roster. Even somebody like Paul George, who is a very good shooter, I'm not sure there's a single great shooter on this roster. There's not a single great shooter, is there?
Well, they need Ferguson to be, right?
But he's not.
No, he's not.
I mean, Adams doesn't space the floor to 3. Patterson is a solid shooter for a big. Noel can't space the floor. Grant is a subpar shooter. Schroeder is an average shooter. Abrines is a pretty solid, good shooter. Not a great shooter, though. Diallo still developing his shot. Deonte Burton, not a knockdown shooter. There's nobody on this roster that can effectively space the floor for Russell Westbrook, who is a guy, optimally would be on a team with the floor spaced 4 out. I mean, this is like an extreme example, but just imagine Westbrook with like Houston spacing, right? Or what Milwaukee is trying to do right now. Those are the ideal conditions for Westbrook, so he can attack the rim, draw a lot of fouls, and get a lot of easier baskets at the rim. But right now with this Oklahoma City roster, they don't have the shooters, but without Andre Robertson, they also don't have their best defender. the team I thought even before the year was possibly on that playoff bubble. If you're thinking about teams that would surprisingly miss the playoffs, to me, they were that number one team that could. And I'm not sure where the solutions are for shooting.
Well, I tell you this, you mentioned Patterson. He has been a colossal disappointment for me. I mean, I was a big fan of his in Toronto, and I thought that was a sneaky, really good signing by Presti last offseason.
It was worth it despite like the injury.
Well, and it has been an abject disaster. I mean, he played 15 minutes for them and gave them 4 points and 2 rebounds last year, and he hadn't hit a shot this year. I mean, he's through the 3 games, he's 26% from the field, for God's sakes. I mean, that's a team, like you were saying, a stretch guy should be getting a lot of open shots, and I really liked what he brought to the table in Toronto, and it just has not worked at all, and I know he's had the injuries, but still, beyond the injuries, he has just not been the Toronto Patterson at all since he has been at Oklahoma City.
No, it seems like that knee injury that he had, he's not the same guy anymore, which is disappointing because he was a really, really good player to watch for a long time.
That's for sure.
One other thought, DeAaron Fox, looking pretty good so far this year. Looking like a more advanced player. It's early, just 3 games, but we saw a little bit of this in preseason. Where maybe he's made some strides. I'm not going to jump the gun on him yet and say he has, because he still has, shot still needs to fall. He didn't shoot the ball well in preseason, and in the regular season, he's only 1 for 7 from 3. But he does seem like he's made some strides overall.
He has got a great head on his shoulders. Great kid. You sat down and did that interview with him just last year.
Yeah.
Anybody that's around him, incredibly likable kid. Speed kills, man. He is so damn fast. He really is. And he's so good with the ball. And I loved him last year going into that draft. I thought he has a chance to be very special. In fairness, I happened to be at the NCAA tournament game that he destroyed Lonzo. Absolutely destroyed him. And I thought, God, what a competitor. Because that's all anybody was talking about was Fox versus Lonzo. And that kid played absolutely out of his mind in that game. He was so good. And he's, I'm not going to be surprised if DeAaron Fox ends up being a star in the league at all. He had a lot of the wall stuff going, right? All the way down to the not trustworthy shot. The other one is he reminded me a lot of Conley, and it took Conley a long time to figure it out. Right? It took him a long time to figure it out, but once if you're willing to put in the work, you can fix a shot. Mike Conley was nobody from 3 and then became a dead-eye 3-point shooter. If Fox could put that to his game, because he still doesn't really do it, boy, he could be devastating because he can get to every spot. Let's get to some of these other takeaways, because you wrote this article about the takeaways at the beginning of the season. We're always given to overreactions over the course of the first couple of games. But I liked some of the ones that you outlined that we have seen so far. One of which, and we'll see which of these have, staying power. But the one that you did about Denver's defense and what it has looked like so far, and you go back and you look at that Warriors game, they missed like 20-something free throws in the game. They shot like hell from 3, and they still end up winning that game. That is just not a game that Denver would have won when they're missing all those free throws and missing all those threes, and they're able to do it by holding the Warriors under 100 points. And obviously Jokic has been out of his mind. But do you think that this is now a schematic thing with Denver and that this is going to stay? That like a team that we kind of knew as a horrendous defensive team could really flip itself into being a pretty good one?
It sure helps having Paul Millsap back healthy. I think,
right.
The blurb you're mentioning in that article focused on Jokic, right?
Yeah.
And it focused on how Denver this season seems to be hedging on pick and rolls more often, which means instead of having the big man defender drop into the paint and, sag and invite shooters to attempt a 3 or for mid-range, he's instead hedging, which is meant to force the ball handler to make a pass. So you're trying to make somebody else beat you, or you're forcing the point guard, the ball handler, into a more difficult shot attempts. And that's been the main change of their pick and roll defense. But Millsap, ultimately, when it comes to rotating and the help defense that needs to occur and covering for Jokic if he does get blown by. Having Millsap back, I think, is what's really making this click on either higher level. Like, Denver's not going to sustain the number one defense in basketball, Chris, but they definitely look better overall, don't they?
Oh, for sure. And listen, I hate that they lost Will Barton because he was off to a really good start, and that's a killer. How about this? That Warrior game? Kevin, I will freely admit this, and I can already hear people goofing on me about this, but I don't care. I am going to freely admit to you, I had absolutely no idea who Torrey Craig is. No idea.
I'm sure you're not the only one.
He was starting in that game against Golden State.
I think you would be forgiven if you didn't know who Torrey Craig is.
I thought you were going to hit me with a Rashawn Holmes.
No, Rashawn. No, I'm not going to hit you.
He played at USC Upstate. This Torrey Craig.
Well, I mean Rashawn Holmes went to Bowling Green. You got to know Bowling. You got to know Bowling Green, Chris.
I know, right? Because all his games were on TV too. Torrey Craig. I was like, who is Torrey? Usually, I will at least have heard of every starter, much less for a starter that's on a good team that's getting a win against the Warriors. But when I saw that name, it said the starters were Gary Harris, Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic, Paul Millsap, and T. Craig. And I was like, who is T. Craig?
Yeah. He's like the type of guy. I mean, we talked about Robertson earlier and how his loss impacts Oklahoma City. Craig might be like even more of a zero on the offensive end of the floor, but like his defense and his hustle, valuable. It is valuable, and I'm going to be curious to see how many minutes he gets moving forward, because you still have like Hernan Gomez and Lyles and Malik Beasley, who I like a lot. I'm curious to see if Craig continues to A, start, or B, gets increased minutes over those guys when he doesn't really offer that much on the offensive end of the floor, if anything.
It's interesting that you brought up Beasley. What's happened with him?
Just might not be as good as would have hoped for.
You think?
No, I mean, Beasley he's an interesting prospect. I liked him a lot in the draft for like a mid first round guy, late first round guy, and he ended up going, I think, in 19th to Denver. Yeah, I mean, he's a solid player, but he's also in a situation where he's behind better prospects, Jamal Murray, Gary Harris. There's not a lot of opportunity there for him yet, but still, like, you would have liked to have seen him become the guy to elevate into a role when Will Barton goes down. It just hasn't happened.
I'll tell you what, the sneaky one, and he's one of these guys that I think I love more than most people. I love Lyles. I do. I think he could end up taking a step. I was kind of upset that I didn't mention him when we were talking about guys that could possibly take a step this upcoming season, because I'm a big fan of his. I bet he ends up starting, honestly, for that team, because he can stretch it out too. I mean, I know he hasn't been burying threes so far, but I think he brings a lot to the table. I think he's a little underrated.
Ultimately, it's about how do you put the best lineup around Nikola Jokic, who has just been magnificent this season, as he was to end last season. It's really carried over. I mean, that game he had last Saturday night, 35 points on 11 for 11 shooting, 11 rebounds, 11 assists. Make a wish on 11-11 for Nikola Jokic. Like that dude was outstanding. And yet, like, because of that fight that happened with Rondo and Chris Paul and Ingram, nobody was talking about it. Maybe nobody would have talked about it earlier because it's a Denver Phoenix game in October. But Thursday night, Nuggets face the Lakers. If Jokic has a big game on national TV, maybe finally, we'll see Nikola Jokic get the credit he deserves as the premier offensive setter in the league, right next to Anthony Davis. He is really a remarkable player on the offensive end of the floor.
Feels like this is going to be the first All-Star appearance.
Gotta be.
You know what I mean?
It's gotta be. I mean, this guy, Jokic is, not only did he show at the end of the last season he can score at a high volume with efficiency, but he's an elite rebounder. He is, to me, one of the best passing centers, if not the best, most talented passing center that I've ever seen. I mean, he is a point guard. He has point guard skills at his position. You can run an offense through him, and his defense has improved. So he's not as much of a limitation on that. He's on his way. He's trending up to becoming a top 15, top 10 player maybe by the end of the season.
When I mentioned Lyles as a guy that could take a step up, you mentioned as a possible Oladipo leap. One of the other ones that I wanted to mention in your 5 takeaways which is this kid for Brooklyn, Caris LeVert.
Love him.
Dude, the highlights you have, I would encourage anybody to go to the Ringer and find Kevin's article on 5 takeaways. The highlights you have in there of him putting Oladipo in a blender, holy mackerel, these moves. I mean, Caris LeVert he looks like a big star, right? Making those moves. And he is such a insanely interesting story, to say the least, right? Because the kid, he just got his college career ruined. He ended up he had 3 surgeries in 22 months. He ended up playing 33 total games his last 2 years, 18 his junior year and 15 his senior year. And I went and looked it up to see, because sometimes you have these, and I know you had mentioned as a guy that he had been talked about as being a possible lottery pick.
I think he would have been if it weren't for those injuries. Yeah.
And I went to go see if he was one that was like, sometimes you'll look back and you'll say, wow, well, that guy was an amazing high school player. He's very highly touted high school player. And so, long ago, people have recognized that this kid was going to be special, and he just got kind of, screwed up by injuries. That just is not the case with him. I went and read the stories. How about this? That kid went to one official visit for college, and it was Alabama State. He ends up getting offers from Michigan, Dayton, and Ohio. He signs with Ohio. Their coach, John Gross, weirdly beats Michigan, so he gets the Illinois job, and the kid just got lost in the shuffle. He was ranked 236th in his high school class, and then shows up to Michigan weighing 152 pounds. And like I said, then his college career you want to talk about the ultimate late bloomer, who not only was a late bloomer, but late bloomed through, 3 surgeries in 22 months it ruins careers, right? And so I love these stories like this for sure. And then looking at those highlights that you put up there, this kid looks special, man. He does. He does look special. And obviously the numbers he's putting up so far are crazy.
Yeah, really with LeVert in the draft, he had his flaws, and he still does. Like finishing through contact, absorbing contact, and because of his lean frame, he was a good, not great defender. But the weaknesses, you really had just poke holes in him, right? You're looking for something, you're searching for something, because the positives were obvious with his shooting ability, his ball handling, his playmaking at his size, his passing vision, the fact that he just simply play hard and is a high character kid who worked hard on and off the court, right? Like the positives were endless. The only real big question was injuries. And that's why I had him ranked in the second round. A lot of NBA people had him ranked second in the second round, but ultimately for the Nets, they felt the confidence that his injuries would be fine. And so far he has been. And they made that Thaddeus Young they traded Thaddeus Young to the Pacers for the pick that was used on LeVert. And now in his 3rd season in the NBA, Chris, he has seemed to have elevated his play. We'll see if he maintains the points per game, but even if his numbers drop to, 18 points per game, we're talking about a guy that got picked 20th. He has already exceeded expectations with his versatility on the offensive end of the floor. To me, if you're projecting ahead for the Brooklyn Nets, LeVert is a guy that can fit next to anybody because of the fact he's a good spot-up shooter, because of the fact that you can use him on ball in a playmaking role. He can do anything for you, no matter what guys are around him on the court. And, for all the chuckles about, when I reported that the Nets weren't willing to put him in an offer for Jimmy Butler, it's kind of easy to see why now, isn't it?
It feels a little bit like back in the day, I remember thinking, and a lot of people thought, you're really not going to give up Klay Thompson to get Kevin Love? You remember that whole deal?
Yeah.
In Minnesota? And it kind of, at the time, it didn't look as big of a no-brainer that you wouldn't give up Klay Thompson to get Kevin Love. And obviously, as time has gone on, it was the right move to stick with Klay Thompson. That being said, I'm not telling you that Caris LeVert's going to end up being that level of player.
No, he's not that level of a shooter.
No, but it can be one of those where you look back and say, no wonder they didn't give the guy up.
Absolutely. I think anytime it's really hard to find two-way players with LeVert's level of versatility. Like, I don't think it can be said enough that this guy, like, you look at the numbers and you might say, oh, 4 assists to 3.7 turnovers. Like, he's not that great of a passer. It's like, no, he is. He's a really good playmaking wing. He's not going to put up big passing numbers, but he can run pick and roll for you and make smart, good decisions and accurate passes. LeVert is a do-it-all guy on the offensive end. He is also, people may not know this or people may know this, he is also actually the cousin of the famous R&B LeVert from, his cousin was the lead singer of the OJs. And obviously everybody knows Gerald and Sean LeVert from the group LeVert back in the day. So how about that? That's pretty cool. A guy could end up being a singer too, maybe. I don't know. I wonder if he can sing. Another parallel story with Victor Oladipo, who is a singer, right? He is. I remember seeing when Oladipo was at Indiana, he was in a talent show at the school. And that's when I first found out about him, because I just happened to come across it on YouTube when the kid was in college. He sang Usher's You Got It Bad, and he was great. And I was like, now this has got to be pretty rare. He's a talented guy. All right, Kevin, we'll get right back to it. First, I want to hear from a couple of our sponsors. Hotel Tonight brings us the mismatch today. Here's a little insider travel secret from our friends at Hotel Tonight. There are tons of empty hotel rooms out there just waiting to be booked, and Hotel Tonight has partnered with these awesome hotels to help them sell those unsold rooms, which means you get incredible deals. Seriously, if you love scoring amazing hotel deals, you've got to try Hotel Tonight. Forget scrolling through never-ending lists. Hotel Tonight shows you a select list of incredible deals at cool hotels they think you'll love. And they even give short profiles of each hotel, complete with all the info you need and pictures of what the rooms really look like. Plus, even though their name's Hotel Tonight, they're not just for last-minute bookings. You can also book in advance. Perfect for spontaneous weekend getaways, 3-day weekends, staycations, road trips, business trips, booking a place with a pool, and more. I will tell you, I just used Hotel Tonight, no lie, a few weeks ago. One of my buddies that works on the show with me went down to cover Memphis versus Tulane in New Orleans, and he was going to try to drive back overnight, and I was like, absolutely not. And I booked Hotel Tonight. I was able to he got a room in the French Quarter, so he was able to spend the night there and then drive back the next morning. You can start scoring amazing deals at incredible hotels. Go to hoteltonight.com or download the app now. The Mismatch also brought to you today by 99 Designs. 99 Designs is a global creative platform headquartered in Melbourne, Australia, that makes it easy for designers and clients to work together. From logos to apps to packaging to books, 99 Designs is the go-to design resource for any budget. 99 Designs is kicking off their partnership with the NBA show, and The Ringer is currently using 99 Designs to design some of the new Ringer store merch. You may have already seen some pictures of the Ringer staff wearing some of the new logoed shirts, and they look great. You can check out the new merch designs and vote for your favorites by visiting 99 Designs. That's the number 99.com/NBA and clicking on the link to vote. And right now you can receive a free $99 upgrade on your first design contest. To get the free upgrade, visit 99designs.com/NBA and click on the link in the landing page. That's 99designs.com/NBA. 99 Designs, where creativity meets possibility. Let's get to the Bucks. Everybody had kind of thought like, hey, the Budenholzer thing is going to be a major upgrade to Jason Kidd no matter what. It was just a matter of how big of an upgrade and how much you're able to do with it. And we talked about unlocking Giannis, but you kind of charted that, and I was a little surprised by this, that their shot distribution, at least through only a couple of games, mirrors more of the Houston Rockets and is much, much, much different than what they were doing last year already. Yeah, it is a significant difference, right? If you look at the Milwaukee Bucks shot distribution so far this season, it is pretty damn close to what the Rockets have done, what the Rockets did last year and what they're doing so far this season. Like, Milwaukee has attempted about a third of their shots from the restricted area, nearly half of their shots from 3-point range. And if that sounds like the Rockets, it's because it is like the Rockets. The difference with Milwaukee is they're not getting their points in the way Houston does. Houston runs their high pick and roll with James Harden and Chris Paul over and over. And if the defense switches, they isolate with the space floor. You'll see Milwaukee run isolations and you'll see them run pick and roll, but not at the frequency that Houston does. They run a lot more ball movement sets that Budenholzer has done for years in Atlanta, and what he learned from his time in San Antonio, his nearly 2 decades there. They use Giannis in the post a lot, and that's something Houston never does. They rarely ever go to the post, and it's just been really fun to watch Giannis in this role where he's put all over the floor, whether it's as a pick and roll ball handler or as a screener in the pick and roll, as a guy in the post who's looking to play make or taking advantage of mismatches, or a guy who's just, like we've always seen him done, just dunking on fools in transition. It is really amazing watching Giannis operate with all this space within this new system.
All right, I want to move on to a couple other teams. Is there any level of concern regarding Boston? And last night, obviously, the offensive output has been poor so far. There's even an article on The Ringer today, and it, of course, ends with they'll end up figuring it out. But so far, what has taken place with the Boston Celtics is probably not what we were expecting. Paolo wrote it, and it was the Celtics didn't get the memo about the NBA scoring boom. And they are adding in Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward into the mix. What do you think? I mean, that was a weird loss to see come across the scoreboard last night with them losing at home to Orlando. You see the ticker go by if you're watching another game, and I kept seeing that ticker go by, and it's one of those where it's like Orlando's up by 4, and I'm like, yeah, well, in the end, they'll end up, down by 20, right? Like the Celtics will turn it on. They never turned it on, right? And they got caught by Orlando on their home court, which was not something I particularly expected to see.
For what it's worth, I didn't see any of that game last night. I haven't even seen a highlight for that matter. But the one thing I have noticed watching Boston so far this season is it seems like they're taking a lot more mid-range jumpers early in the clock. I don't recall them doing that quite as often, and that might just be a small sampling, but it does seem like they're taking more mid-range shots early in the clock. And, again, Kyrie Irving has not seemed like the same guy so far this season, maybe working himself back from his offseason injury, his knee injury last year, sorry. Hayward, obviously not the same. They're going to be fine, but I am curious about some of these trends with the mid-range shot selection.
I tell you this, and again, it's still early in the season, but Clifford is he's been good for Nikola Vucevic because that kid has started on fire. He's averaging 19 and 10. We've always known he's a talented guy, right? But he was great last night against them. I did get to see some of it because not only he, but I mean, their front court with him and Isaac. Isaac ends up with like 18 and 12 last night.
Yeah, Isaac had big numbers.
Yeah, you said that Orlando could surprise some people by getting some wins, even despite the fact that they may not end up winning a ton of games. And so it's interesting to see that particular tandem. And so far this year, I mean, this has become Vucevic. It's weird, right? The mix was so goofy when they added Biyombo, and it was like, I don't know. We all had very high thoughts about Vucevic, and then kind of got lost in the mix. And obviously they were losing a million games, but maybe Clifford is going to get, we're going to see the Vooch that we saw a couple of years ago when it looked like he was one of the real promising young possible stars, right? I mean, that was how everybody felt about that kid. And he's just been in witness protection almost for the last couple of years.
Yeah, Vucevic, last year he started incorporating shooting threes more frequently, and this year his attempts are down. But yeah, I mean, he's always been a talented offensive center. Maybe the opportunity will be there now that that glut of centers isn't on the roster anymore, where he can, play next to Jonathan Isaac or Mo Bamba, who can also space the floor from three. It'll be interesting. I mean, this Orlando team has some quality young players on it, right? I mean, Aaron Gordon as well. Vucevic is, still only 27. Jonathan Isaac ultimately Him and Mo Bamba are the guys that their development is the most important thing this season. Those guys making strides independently and together on the floor is what could someday make this Orlando defense into a high-power defense with all their length and versatility.
Yeah, do you know, and the same guy that built Hammond, that built the Bucks, and you look at their absurd length, I mean, he's obviously running the show down in Orlando, and so you just end up taking who's the guy with the longest wingspan, and he's probably got a chance of being drafted by John Hammond.
I got to see last night's game because Isaac specifically, scoring 18 points. I need to see how he scored those points and why he scored those points, because he's always had like tantalizing offensive potential. It's just he doesn't really have that scorer's mentality, and his ball handling needs to develop. But it's encouraging to see him do that against a really, really good Celtics defense.
If anybody pulls the plug quick because a team starts, with a terrible record, like maybe way behind the 8 ball, they start 1-8, or they start, something like, all right, so we've got a couple candidates for sure, right? You got the Bulls. So would you be more worried if you are Fred Hoiberg, Ty Lue, Luke Walton, or Billy Donovan?
Oh boy, I'd be worried if I'm any of those guys.
I wonder which one, right? The Bulls spent a lot of money in the offseason. Dan Gilbert said, we're still going to win without LeBron. They have looked like shit. I mean, I saw that Hawks team in person, Kevin. That team is awful.
Yeah.
And they
Trey Young
ran
is
about
much better than Marshawn Brooks, though.
You ain't lying. Now, in fairness, he's going to get to do everything he wants to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
as this season
if you
goes
put Marshawn Brooks on the Hawks offense, we'll see.
Well, no, listen, I saw Marshawn Brooks on a rat team last year, by the way.
Yeah.
I did. I saw him on a rat team.
Yeah, okay.
Did you see what he did?
Yeah.
That's what happens. You're allowed to do whatever you want.
7 games.
When you lose 60 games, you're allowed to do whatever you want. Nobody cares what you do. I told you, listen, I know everybody's, got an erection over Trey Young already. I've told you, this is
that the first time that word has ever been used on the Ringer NBA show?
Probably.
It's a good context.
There's going to be a little Oklahoma going on with this. Just watch what I say. He ran through everybody at Oklahoma for about 2 weeks, and then they lost 50 games in a row to end that season. And it wasn't as easy as it was. Like, he'll get to go this first time through. And I'm not trying to take away from him. I'm not. 35 in a win is unbelievable. But I know that you roll your eyes at this, but I do believe in when you lose like hell, when you lose a lot and you're able to take whatever shot you want to take and do whatever you want to do, that is not what is necessarily best. Because I'm seeing it now with a kid like Dylan Brooks, who was able to do anything he wanted to do last year. And now, like, when you're trying to win games, you can't just do whatever you want to do. And in fairness, I saw it years ago. I loved OJ Mayo. And anybody can go back and look at this. Kid almost averaged 20 points a game his rookie year. If Derrick Rose didn't exist, he probably would have been the rookie of the year. And then you fast forward to when, the team became a winning team. And guess what? That's not what you are when the team wins. And maybe Trey Young will be like Curry, and that's what you are on a winning team. But I have my doubts of that. That's all I'll say.
I'm writing about Trey Young this week, so I'll save my thoughts for that article. But I'll say that I think you're hitting on some good points. And I had Trey Young ranked 11th for a reason. But I do think his play early this season is very encouraging.
Very encouraging. Listen, he's a very good player. But more than that, to me, that Trey Young amazing performance in Cleveland was way more about Cleveland. That's just bananas.
I don't know, man. I mean,
that's crazy.
The one thing about Trey is it's not just scoring; it's passing. He's a really, really great passer. And he's also
the point guard on a team that I watched give up 77 to the freaking Grizzlies in a half. That team is awful, Kevin. Trust me. That is bizarre. That Cleveland would get run out like that on their home court. Ty Lue may not make it there, seriously, because Gilbert thought they were going to be a good team, right? Now he may be dead wrong about that, but I thought they were going to be okay, maybe not good.
10 seed in the East. Is that okay?
I mean, didn't you think they would possibly fight for a playoff spot?
I don't know. I mean,
maybe not.
I think you can get in the playoffs in the East and still be a bad team. team in the 7 or 8 spot.
That's true. That's true. That's
Yeah.
fair. All right. So, hey, Hoiberg, Lou, Walton, Donovan. It seems like Gilbert would be the least patient, right? I'd probably be most worried if I were Tyler, that if it spins out for a couple more games, that he would, the Bulls, I don't know. Are you going to sit there and say, I know we spent a lot of money in this offseason, but we're not living up to what I thought we were going to be?
No, I mean, who could have thought, spending money on Zach LaVine and Jabari Parker would help your defense? Come on now.
And it seems like Jeannie Buss is really in Walton's corner, so we throw that one out. And Presti has been a very patient guy. That Oklahoma City team was not very good for a good portion of last year, and he stuck with Billy Donovan. But listen, these guys, these GMs, they go to the owner, and they're either blaming the coach or blaming the roster, and sure as hell they ain't blaming the roster. They're saying, we should be good. Our coach stinks.
I mean, can we be real, though? I mean, for a team like Chicago or Cleveland, for that matter, you shouldn't really be expected to win that many games, right? For Chicago, it's about the development of those young players, about Wendell Carter, and once Lauri Markkanen comes back, it's about those guys getting better. It's about hopefully, if Hoiberg can help LaVine turn into actually a competent defender, right? If you can help these guys develop, you're still not going to win a lot of games. And then not only that, you're just better off losing. You're better off having a high draft pick if you're Chicago or Cleveland. You're not if you're Oklahoma City or the Lakers, where the expectation is the playoffs. The expectation is a high playoff seed. It's not to win a championship. It's to be a really competitive team that gets a 3 seed in the Western Conference. If you're not meeting those expectations, then I think you'd be worried. I think for Hoiberg and Lou, the conversation, the context is less about the winning or losing and more so, how are they managing the players? How are the players developing? How do we feel the team is being run? And that's true also for the Lakers and the Thunder. But it's a little bit more results based maybe with those teams.
Yeah, if we were talking about maybe like somebody making a move, obviously the one that people have already thrown out there once Cleveland looks like crap is, hey, now it's Kevin Love's turn to get traded somewhere.
It's
right?
tough to blame the coach though, man. We talked about Oklahoma City and the Lakers to open the show. Oklahoma City doesn't have many shooters on their team. It's tough for Billy Donovan to probably run the type of offense he wants to, and same for the Lakers. Their shooting is average or below average for that matter. It's the personnel too. Judging coaches is really, I think from the outside for us, like we can look at rotations and we can look at how they're, utilizing the roster, but we don't see into practices, like how they're managing the guys. We're not seeing how they manage, disagreements that happen. Like those are the things that, in my opinion, ultimately would play a factor in whether to, fire a guy or keep a guy.
Well, and what we're seeing with that Oklahoma City team is kind of what we saw last year, which is the Robertson loss is way too – it is bigger than what it should be for them, but it is significant. Like you saw their defensive numbers just plummet last year without that kid on the team. And now they're talking about, December. Who knows? Hopefully, for their sake, they could get him back by December. But Robertson being out of the lineup probably shouldn't have that drastic of effect. And that's kind of where their bread was buttered. They were a team that was a very good defensive team because they had one of the best perimeter defenders in Robertson, and they've got obviously a back line that includes Adams, who's outstanding.
And Paul George as well.
Yeah. So, but now when you took that kid out of the mix, their defense isn't, it's not daunting to deal with. And it certainly hasn't been through the first couple of games of the season. In fairness, Westbrook's only, he just got back.
Long way to go.
Yeah, got a long way to go. Kevin, it has been a very fun first week of the season. We would have gotten more into the spitting incident, but I know you guys chronicled that completely on Heat Check yesterday.
I'm tired of that already, to be honest with you.
You are?
Yeah, I'm tired of it. The only thing that's still interesting to me is the length of the suspensions. Like, I think it was very soft. 4, 3, and 2. I'm very surprised. Like, David Stern would have laid the hammer down on those guys. And whether that's for better or for worse, I'm not sure. But the suspensions were absolutely light.
I thought that they might make an example of it, right?
Me too.
I look forward to reading when's that Trey Young article coming out?
I think we're going to have it after the Mavericks-Hawks game on Wednesday.
Oh, yeah, right. Nobody's going to be paying attention to that. The Doncic Trey Young game, are they?
Nobody.
Wow.
Nobody's going. Who's gonna watch that?
I know.
Between two non-playoff teams, who's gonna watch that? We're gonna watch that, Chris.
Everybody will be tuned in for sure. Kevin, it's always a pleasure. Hey, thanks everybody for listening to another episode of The Mismatch. If you dig what you're hearing, go give us a rating and review on iTunes. Please give us 5 stars. 5 stars. It really helps the cause. And we will talk to you next week.